Most people will never experience true mental strength, not because they can't, but because they refuse to pay the price. And that price? Total detachment from the herd. The moment you start thinking for yourself, you become a mirror for others' insecurities. They'll call you cold, ruthless, or too much. But here's what they won't say. I wish I had your courage. In this video, we'll expose the hidden cost of an unshakable mind and why it's worth every ounce of pain. Here's the thing. When you start changing, people notice, and not in a good way. Personal growth forces others to confront their own stagnation, and they hate it. The moment you stop thinking like the group, you become a walking reminder of what they could be but aren't. Their discomfort isn't about you, it's about the mirror you've become. They'll mask it as concern. You've changed, they'll say, as if it's a bad thing. Or they'll mock your discipline, calling you extreme for waking up early or refusing to waste time on pointless gossip. What they're really saying is, stop making me question my own choices. Studies on herd mentality show how groups pressure individuals to conform, even when conformity means stagnation. The more you grow, the more resistance you'll face, because growth exposes the comfort of mediocrity. Take someone who quits drinking when their friends never do. Suddenly they're no fun anymore. Or consider the person who starts setting boundaries after years of people-pleasing. Now they're selfish. These aren't criticisms, they're projections. When people can't match your energy, they'll try to drag you back to where they are. It's easier than admitting they're stuck. This backlash isn't accidental. Research shows social groups unconsciously punish outliers to maintain cohesion. A University of Maryland study found that people who deviate from group norms face immediate social exclusion, even when their actions are positive. The herd doesn't care if you're improving. It only cares that you're different. The tension escalates when your growth highlights their lack of it. A co-worker who starts upskilling while others coast will face passive-aggressive comments. A friend who leaves a toxic relationship might hear, "You think you're better than us now?" Again, it's not about you. It's about the uncomfortable truth you represent. Change is possible, but it requires effort they're unwilling to give. Here's why this matters. Their fear is proof you're on the right path. If no one's uncomfortable, you haven't changed enough. Resistance is the price of progress. The louder the criticism, the clearer it is you're moving in the right direction. But why does this happen? Why do people fight so hard against someone else's growth? The answer lies in what real strength costs, and it's far heavier than most are willing to pay. The truth is, strength isn't built in comfort zones. Mental strength requires sacrifice, not just effort. You don't become unshakable by reading quotes or attending seminars. You get there by enduring experiences that break most people and choosing to rebuild yourself anyway. Nietzsche called this process chaos as a catalyst. He believed you must embrace inner turmoil to give birth to what he called the dancing star, the unshakable version of yourself. This isn't poetic exaggeration. Think about the last time you faced real hardship. Maybe it was a failure that gutted you, or a period of isolation where you questioned everything. That discomfort wasn't an obstacle. It was the training. Studies on post-traumatic growth show that people who confront adversity often develop greater resilience, clarity, and purpose than those who avoid struggle. The key difference? They didn't just survive the chaos, they used it. Look at historical figures who operated on another level. Nikola Tesla spent years working alone, often mocked for his ideas, before revolutionizing electricity. Emily Dickinson wrote nearly 1,800 poems in isolation, most unpublished in her lifetime. They didn't just tolerate solitude, they leveraged it. Nietzsche put it bluntly, "The individual must always struggle not to be overwhelmed by the tribe. If you try, you will often feel lonely and sometimes scared, but no price is too high to pay for possessing yourself." Here's the tension. The stronger you become, the more you'll stand apart. Not because you're arrogant, but because growth demands detachment from mass thinking. Most people would rather cling to comfort than face the uncertainty of transformation. That's why they'll call you extreme for waking up early, or antisocial for prioritizing deep work over small talk. What they're really saying is, your discipline makes my laziness uncomfortable. This isolation isn't a side effect, it's a requirement. Nietzsche's concept of the Übermensch explains why. The Übermensch doesn't seek approval or follow herd morality. They create their own values even if it means walking alone. That's why mental strength terrifies people. It's not just about willpower. It's about the willingness to burn bridges with collective mediocrity. Chaos isn't your enemy. It's the furnace where your strongest self gets forged. Every time you choose hardship over comfort, you're not just building resilience. You're building something far more powerful, a mind that can't be controlled. The world will push back. It will test you. But that resistance is how you know it's working. So how do you embrace this? It starts with dismantling the false version of yourself, the one shaped by others' expectations. The path isn't easy, but ease was never the point. Strength is. And the further you go, the fewer people will understand. That's not a failure. It's proof you're on the right track. Let's break it down. Authenticity means burning the fake version of you. The false self isn't something you're born with. It's built over years of seeking approval, following rules you didn't choose, and molding yourself to fit in. Nietzsche called this the herd mentality, the instinct to conform rather than create. The tension starts when you realize dismantling this false self feels like losing your identity. Because in a way, it is. You're not just changing habits, you're killing the person you pretended to be. Start by identifying where you seek validation. Do you post online just for likes? Do you avoid controversial opinions to keep peace? These aren't neutral choices. They're compromises. Research shows people who score high in authenticity tests share one trait. They prioritize internal standards over external rewards. A University of Rochester study found that those who make decisions based on personal values, not social pressure, report higher life satisfaction. The first step is simple but brutal. Stop asking for permission. Next, confront the stories you've been told. Be humble. Don't rock the boat. Wait your turn. These aren't truths. They're control mechanisms. Nietzsche argued that most morality is just the weak trying to limit the strong. When you start rejecting these narratives, you'll feel disoriented. That's normal. Your brain has wired itself to obey. Rewiring takes friction. Now practice radical honesty, especially with yourself. Most people lie daily without realizing it. I'm fine when you're not. That doesn't bother me when it does. Each lie reinforces the false self. A study in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that people who engage in self-deception experience higher long-term stress. Honesty isn't about being harsh, it's about refusing to perform. The hardest part? Embracing the loneliness. As Nietzsche put it, the individual must always struggle not to be overwhelmed by the tribe. When you stop performing, some relationships will evaporate. They were built on a version of you that no longer exists. This isn't loss, it's purification. Here's what happens when you succeed. You become unmanipulable. No one can guilt trip you because you don't need their approval. No one can rush you because you're not chasing their timeline. The Übermensch doesn't adapt to the world. They impose meaning upon it. This isn't arrogance, it's sovereignty. But what's the cost? There's always a cost, and it's higher than most people want to pay. Here's the thing about solitude. It's not something you choose. It's what happens when you start thinking for yourself. The stronger your mind becomes, the further you drift from the masses. This isn't about being antisocial. It's about reaching a point where most conversations feel shallow, where groupthink becomes obvious, and where you can't unsee the patterns most people blindly follow. The herd will try to pull you back, not because they care about you, but because your growth exposes their stagnation. Solitude sharpens self-awareness in ways constant social interaction never could. When you're alone, there's no audience to perform for, no opinions to mimic, no external noise clouding your judgment. Nietzsche's concept of the Übermensch, the individual who creates their own values, requires this detachment. The free spirit, the one who breaks away from common morality, who does not accept easy truths, who thinks for themselves, inevitably distances themselves from the herd. Look at history's most original thinkers. Nikola Tesla spent years in isolation, often working through the night in his lab. Emily Dickinson wrote nearly 1,800 poems, most unpublished in her lifetime, from the seclusion of her bedroom. They weren't just working alone. They were thinking in ways the crowd couldn't comprehend. The tension comes when you realize solitude isn't peaceful. It's a confrontation. In that desert, there are no applauses, no praise, and no guide. There's only you, your doubts, your traumas, your fears, and your desire to give up. That's where the real test begins. Most people flee back to the herd at this point because facing yourself is harder than facing any critic. But if you stay, something shifts. You start seeing through the illusions most people take for granted. The chase for status, the need for constant validation, the fear of standing out. Detachment gives you something rare: perspective. When you're not embedded in group dynamics, you spot the rules of the game everyone else blindly follows. You notice how people cling to busyness to avoid thinking, how they adopt opinions to fit in, how they fear silence because it forces introspection. This isn't cynicism, it's clarity. The Übermensch does not adapt to the world. He imposes meaning on the world. That power comes from seeing systems from the outside, not being trapped within them. The irony? The more you distance yourself, the more influence you gain. People sense when someone operates by their own code. It unnerves them because it's unfamiliar, but it also commands respect. They may not understand you, but they'll remember you. That's the paradox of solitude. By stepping away, you develop a presence that can't be ignored. So what's the final test? It's not about enduring loneliness. It's about whether you can stand by your convictions when the world labels them strange, unnecessary, or even dangerous. The strongest minds don't just tolerate isolation, they use it as fuel. Because once you've faced yourself in the silence, the opinions of others lose their weight. You stop needing followers. You become the exception, and exceptions change the world. The moment people start fearing your mind is when you know you've won. Not because you want their fear, but because it means you've become untouchable. Building real strength isn't a one-time effort. It's choosing to fight every day, even when you could stop. Start today. Write down one belief you've been afraid to voice, one truth you've hidden to fit in. That's your first act of rebellion against mediocrity. The world doesn't need more followers, it needs more people who refuse to be controlled, who think freely, and who aren't afraid to stand alone. That's how change begins. Not with noise, but with silence. With one person who dares to see through the illusion and refuses to play by its rules. If this hit something deep in you, if you felt that pull to detach, to evolve, to become something most people won't understand, then you're not alone. You're just becoming rare. Like the video if you felt that shift. Subscribe if you're building a mind that can't be broken. And share this with someone who's ready to burn the old version of themselves and rise. Stay sharp, stay ruthless, and I'll see you in the next one.